So, I reluctantly watched the Jeffrey Dahmer series, and this one thing in particular stood out to me and made me want to do a video about it. So, after the release of the series, the LGBTQ group stood up in unison and fought to have their tag, or the designation that the series was about the LGBTQ, removed from the show. They wanted to make sure that the show did not represent them in any way. That was funny to me, but I didn't pay too much attention to it. Then I actually watched the show, and after watching it, the fact that the LGBT people didn't identify with this show and didn't feel that it represented them at all was disturbing to me. Think about it a little bit. This entire show was specifically about homosexuals. Jeffrey Dahmer was obviously a homosexual, and almost every one of his victims, with the exception of maybe one, were also homosexuals. So why did the LGBTQ group have an issue with being associated with this series? Well, it's because Jeffrey Dahmer was one of the worst animals on the planet. He was a child molester, a rapist, a cannibal, and a murderer. Oh, and he's also a white male. That's the issue. Almost all of Dahmer's victims were non-white. Most of them were black. And the show kind of focuses on those black victims because the majority of Dahmer's targets were black. And that brings me to the reason why I titled this video the way that I did. It's a very, very important fact that black homosexuals need to figure out, understand, and remember. This whole LGBT movement thing has been framed as a minority issue. Its intent was to separate these people from the white supremacists that have been spreading havoc all over the globe. But in reality, the main people behind this LGBT movement are obviously white themselves. And most of them are also white supremacists. So when they see this series about Jeffrey Dahmer and they see the LGBTQ tag linking them to the show, they recoil because when they hear LGBTQ, they only think about Jeffrey Dahmer because he's white. The LGBTQ movement is a movement about white people, and it's for white people. White homosexuals don't recognize non-white homosexuals as their equals. They don't think of black homosexuals as one of them. This entire show was not only about Jeffrey Dahmer, it was also about the homosexuals who were the victims of his horrible crimes. An entire episode was specifically about a deaf homosexual and his life before he met Dahmer. So the LGBTQ tag would be appropriate because the show is also about the innocent homosexual victims, their lives, and their stories. But because those victims were black, the white LGBT people don't view them as part of their group. So they didn't see any of that. They only saw one of their white brothers who was being portrayed in a negative light, and so they didn't want to be associated with the show. This is a message to my black brothers and sisters who are homosexual. White homosexuals are just like their white heterosexual brothers and sisters. Many of them are either disgusting racists who hate black people, or they just don't like black people. So the fact that you may be homosexual like them doesn't mean they feel closer to you. The way they have sex doesn't change who they are inside. The same way that a heterosexual white supremacist who is attracted to tall, skinny, long-haired women doesn't make him different from a heterosexual white supremacist who is attracted to short-haired, voluptuous, short women. Being a white supremacist who is attracted to someone of the same gender doesn't make you different from being a white supremacist who is attracted to someone of the opposite gender. When white homosexuals see you, they don't think of you the same as them. They only see you as a means to an end. You're either someone they can have fun with in bed or someone they can use as a stepping stool to a better life for themselves. When white homosexuals use the term LGBTQ, it's a ruse meant to bolster their numbers so that they can make a better life for themselves at your expense. If white homosexuals really believed that all homosexuals were in this together, they would have watched this series and realized that the show was also about their black homosexual comrades and their experiences. But they didn't see that because they don't think of black homosexuals as one of their own. They watched this series and only focused on Dahmer because he's white like them. And in their minds and in their hearts, him being white makes him one of their group. Him, not the black homosexuals who were also focused on in the show. So I wrote that down. I was reading it. So if it sounds like I was reading, it's because I was. I didn't want to miss out on any points. But yeah, that's something that has stood out to me. It was a very big deal when I'm watching the series. So I'm like, why did they want that tag removed? This show it's a LGBT show. It's about homosexuals. So why would you want to remove that? They wanted it removed because they realized, they wanted it removed because in their minds, when they see the show Jeffrey Dahmer, they're thinking, well, LGBT is attached to him because he's white. All the black homosexuals in the show, and there were dozens and dozens of them in the show, well, in the white LGBT's minds, well, those people aren't one of us. So we don't want our tag attached to them. Our tag, which is exactly how they feel. Black homosexuals, you got to stop lumping yourselves in with these white LGBT people because they don't think of you as one of them. They only going to use you guys to make their group bigger, give themselves a bigger voice and a bigger platform so that they can do what like the white people did in the Black Lives Matters movement and just rake in all this money for themselves, and then once they're done, throw the black people that helped them and supported them under the bus, which is what you see happening now. Black people, you got to stop falling for this stuff. Just because you run into some non-blacks who are homosexuals, it doesn't mean you guys are the same. You guys are the same as the rest of us heterosexual black people. We're the brothers and sisters that are involved in this or that are stuck together in this struggle that's going on this planet. So you got to remember that. Real quick about the show. The show was really good. I'm going to say I love the show. Towards the end, it started to get slow because they were trying to pad it a little bit. So there was a lot of stuff that just was irrelevant to me. But other than that, the actors all did great jobs. It created this great atmosphere. It was eerie and disturbing without actually having to be gory. That's a credit to the writers. They set it up so that you got this feeling of being around this demonic monster, but they didn't have to show him actually really murdering the people and cutting them up into pieces and eating them. They show little glimpses of that, but it wasn't really focused on in the way I thought it would be, and it actually worked out very well. So I got to commend the writers on that. Again, I don't support Netflix, so I was able to watch this for free. That's why this is coming out so late. But the show, all in all, it was a good show. I'm not going to say it wasn't good at all. I like the guy that they picked to be Dahmer, so I enjoyed it. All in all, there is a lot of men touching on each other and sleeping on each other and kissing each other and stuff. So if you're gonna watch this, you gotta be prepared for the gayness. Be prepared for the gayness. I had to just. Luckily, you're able to. I think you can do it on Netflix too, but on the way I was watching it, I'm able to fast forward in a way where I can see clips. So I was whenever men started getting close into the touching scenes, I would just be able to fast forward it and then just look at the clips to see when they were done, and then I would hit play and I could watch it. So, but other than that, and that's not a bad thing. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I just don't like seeing that, and it's a lot of people aren't going to want to have to see it. So you can fast forward it, but of course I'm not saying it's a bad thing that it was done. It had to be done. It's a show about homosexuals, and you're gonna see it. You got to see it. You got to watch it. I mean, you don't got to watch it, but it's gonna be in there. So all in all, it was a good show. If you want to check it out, I do recommend checking it out. It also gives a glimpse into how these demonic white supremacists work as a whole. So this guy was able to just get away with molesting children, killing men, cutting their bodies up, drugging people, and he just got off. He got off kind of scot-free because the police just let it pass because he's white. And it goes to what a lot of us black people say: the crime numbers all these crime stats that list black people as this group that commits a lot of crimes, those stats are skewed because white people they set up the stats. What the fuck can I talk today? They set up the stats so that it suits them. And so there are a lot of crimes that just don't get reported because the police don't investigate it as a crime because the perpetrator is a white person, so they ignore it or they excuse it or they don't even know about it because they're not as interested in looking into this person as they are if a black person is accused of a crime. As you can see in cases like the one with Tamir Rice, somebody called the cops and said, I think someone may be playing with a weapon. It may be a toy. The cops showed up, guns blazing. They executed the child on the spot, and they didn't get in any trouble for it. It was perfectly legal. That's how black people are dealt with. With a white person, well, somebody can beg you to investigate this person because they are saying that they're guilty of a crime, and the cops won't even pay attention. They'll ignore it and just send the white person on their way. So that's how our society works. This show is a great example of that. This guy molested a child. He already had, prior to that, already had a criminal record. And then when he went to court, the judge was just like, yes, okay, buddy. You remind me of someone in my family, so I'm going to give you just 1 year. Is that okay? And and I know I don't want you to lose your job, so I'm going to give you work release, which means you can leave the prison and go to your job. And you know what? To make sure you don't lose your job, I'm also going to make sure that the crime that you actually committed, that won't be revealed to your employer, because I want to make sure that you keep your job, sir. I mean, that's unheard of. I didn't even know that was a thing. I didn't know work release was a thing for low-level offenders. I thought that was for like big-wig white-collar people, white-collar crime committers. But no, it looks like it's also for white people if the judge fancies them in some way. So this guy was just getting all kinds of excuses. The cops bending over backwards to try to help him. I don't know if this is accurate or not, or if it was just done for the story. But in the story, the cops are like harassing the families of the victims. I guess because the victims were not white. I don't know. I don't know, man. There's so many things I want to say about white people. I'm just not going to say. It's just really horrendous, disgusting, demonic behavior by some white people. That's by most white people. I'm sorry, by most white people. So it's bad, but yeah. Watch the show if you can. It's a good show. Black homosexuals, pay attention to what I said earlier, and to the entire black family. You gotta watch these series, and you gotta figure some shit out. Something's gotta be changed. Look at this shit that's happening. Look how we are not thought of as humans. White people hate us so much, and they're so jealous of us that they have convinced themselves that we are not human. They go out of their way to make sure they treat us worse than everyone else. Because in their minds, I believe that in their minds, and again, I'm not saying we are, but I believe in their minds that they think we are superior to them. And so as a result, there's this jealousy that kicks in, and it makes them go out of their way to try to destroy us. And that's always going to be the case. That will never change. It's not going to change. So black people, you got to recognize that, and you have to understand that when dealing with white people. I'm sorry. And I'm sorry it has to be said. I'm sure I'm going to get flagged, and things are going to be removed, and I'm going to be punished for stating reality, which is another thing that whites do. But I'm going to state reality. I'm never going to shy away from reality. I'm not getting paid for this shit anyway. So black people got to realize that. White people are always going to go out of their way to try to destabilize you and destroy you. So if you want to make any change, or you want to do something to better your position, you got to do something. And my suggestion is to stop spending money with these big white-run corporations. Big companies, you pull your money from them. That's really the only thing you can do. This isn't a Stop Shopping video. This was really about the white homosexuals' hatred and jealousy of black people, and to send out a reminder that the LGBTQ movement is a movement that was started to separate white homosexuals from their white heterosexual white supremacist counterparts. It doesn't mean that the white homosexuals are any different from the white heterosexuals other than the type of sex that they have. That's really all that it means. Other than that, they are exactly the same. They are just as racist and demonic as a lot of their white heterosexual brothers and sisters. The LGBTQ movement has roped in all these different groups, different nationalities, and the wealthy white homosexuals in power use those people to help give them a leg up, help prop them up, bring attention to them so that they can do things that help them financially. But at the end of the day, they don't give a shit about any of these homosexuals who happen to not be white. To them, you are just as irrelevant as the as white heterosexuals think we are. So don't waste your time aligning with this group. The LGBT group is primarily a white-run group that's going to help white people. So stop wasting your time. Watch the show and also stop shopping. All right, bye-bye.